I'm Chris Erdmann, and this is Made of More, the show where we go beyond business to uncover real stories that shape entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, we explore the pivotal moments, the adversity faced, the risks taken, and the resilience found along the way. This isn't just about what people have built, it's about who they've become. If you're ready for inspiration, practical insights, and stories that remind you that you too are made of more, you're in the right place. So today we have Tucker Miller, a leadership coach, speaker, author of over 35 years experience helping businesses, owners, leaders expand their business influence and influence visibility. Drawing from a background in law, HR, corporate leadership, she blends a strategic insight of practical guidance, storytelling in every conversation. Her book, The First Four Words, helps leaders spark transformational conversations and inspire action. Tucker's signature program is Clarity Coaching, a focused 3-hour deep dive session empowering professionals at their crossroads to get unstuck. Also to clarify and build momentum. She believes everyone possesses a unique genius, and she also helps people not only name it, but claim it in a way that transforms their lives. Is that how you want to be known there, Tucker?
Actually, if it were up to me, I would have made it just a tad bit briefer, but that is very complete. 35 years kind of adds up to a lot of angles, so I think you covered them all.
All right. Yeah, I did. Thank you.
I'm blushing is what I mean. There was nothing wrong in what you did.
I can see they could see it on camera too.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you for joining me today, and this is really exciting because I've had the opportunity to listen to you do presentations and do short snippets in one of our business groups of just giving us all this different types of knowledge. And so we're going to dive into your book a little bit today.
Sure.
And your leadership coaching. But before we do that, I just want to know, how did you become this leadership coach? What shaped you?
The first thing that immediately comes to mind is I am the oldest of 3 girls and the daughter of an Air Force officer. So I can't think of a time where I wasn't surrounded by leadership. It was in the DNA of our family experience, but it was also everywhere around me when I grew up on a military base. So you see people with all the medals and the stars and the salutes, and I think that left an impression on me. And it was just sort of a natural progression. And then in my career life, a passion for all things business really starts to shape what that leadership angle looks like when you step out of a military environment. Where does that lead? And for me, it was corporate life for a long time.
Yeah. What was your first endeavor in this leadership outside of your youth?
I was afraid you were going to ask about my first job. So let's talk about leadership.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting, and I see this in my son as well. Leaders can learn. It can be a skill set that people get better and better and better at. But there's also certain, those X factor qualities where even if you choose not to be a leader, when you look over your shoulder, you got a bunch of people following you. And I mentioned my son because he always wanted to avoid being a leader.
Sure.
One of the challenges was even when he was acting up in all manner of ways that he shouldn't have been leading, he still had a lot of followers. And so that's all corrected course. But it was interesting watching that. And I thought that's really been my experience too, without even intentionally, as a younger person, high school, early college, even though I wasn't intentional about being a leader, I couldn't not be a leader.
Because
in
people
some
are watching?
fashion. People watching, people following, people being curious. And one of the things that I've always been able to do is express myself in writing and in speaking. And if you can lead with some kind of clarity that people literally understand where you're going,
sure,
and you pique their interest, there will be people following you. And the irony is there are a lot of people in corporate life that may have all the vestiges of leadership or hierarchical authority, and when they look over their shoulder, there's nobody following them. So just because you've got the corner office or the big fancy leather chair, pardon?
Or the credentials.
Or the credentials doesn't guarantee that you've got people following you in the way that you might think or expect.
To you, what is the definition of a leader?
Well, I love that you asked me that because that's usually a question that I'll pose to leaders when I'm involved in a speaking engagement. And I'll start with exactly that. How do you know whether or not you're a leader? And I've already referenced it. It's literally that when you look over your shoulder, there's got to be people following you. And leader is not a title. It is a set of characteristics that people believe in, trust, and want to be a part of. So in any organization, there are any number of leaders that may or may not be designated as, quote, formal leader. But if they have people following them for reasons that align with the values of an organization or don't, they're still leaders. And the question is, how do you really wrangle that leadership in a way that furthers everybody's collective objectives?
That sounds really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Do you think leaders, it sounds like, are your leaders born or are they made?
I was expecting that question. I think there's a certain category of people that are natural leaders, and that's what I was referencing to some degree with myself, although I was exposed to so much great leadership in the way I was growing up. So nature, nurture. But I saw it even in my son. As much as he pushed away and didn't want the pressure of being a leader, he couldn't not be a leader. So there's certainly a category.
Tell me why.
Well, I think we'd all like to know why. I think he did have, as people do, some innate qualities that attract attention, the X factor. We can't always name exactly what it is or put our finger on it, but there's something so charismatic, intriguing, that people engage in, they're curious about, and may follow. That said, I work with a lot of leaders who may find themselves in positions of leadership that are looking to learn and expand their skills as a leader. And there are a lot of skills that can be taught, practiced, and improved. So it's a yes and yes. Are they born that way, or do they learn? And even those that are born that way, learning how to harvest or manage that given power of influence or charisma becomes a next step for them as well. So just because you're born with something doesn't mean there isn't a need to kind of manage it in the context of whatever role you play in life.
Well, thank you for that answer. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we're born that way, and also we're made that way, right?
Yeah. And we can learn.
We can learn. So, and you take a lot of leaders already that are already at one level, and you bring them to the next level.
My favorite leaders to work with are often senior leaders, and I think some of it is shared life experience. I'm in older, later stage of my career, given 35 years of experience. I'll let people guess my age. I'm not going to say it. But at the same time, that shared experience gives me a lot that I understand for people who've been in leadership roles for a long time. That's been my experience as well. The other thing I love about working with senior leaders is they have been successful in their careers to arrive at whatever place they're in, and they're looking at a couple of things, or their organization is looking at them improving a couple of things. So some of the leaders I work with at that stage are looking to leave a legacy. They know that they're in the last chapter or two, so the question becomes, how do they want to leave their campsite better than they found it? What are the legacy pieces that they leave behind? That's a really rich conversation to have with people. How do they want to be remembered? That's big. The other reason why I like working with senior leaders is they're very accomplished, and oftentimes there's about 5 or 10% of refinement that could be game-changing for them. So they're not the beginning early manager, leader, learning all the basics of how do I do a performance review or give feedback, and I can certainly help with that as well. But when you're working with senior leaders, they are usually at a place where they are one step away from the big goal. And so cracking the code on what is that one piece and where do they want to leave their mark in the context of that is a fascinating and very rewarding area to focus on. Frequently, people who are in senior levels, they can easily think, I've arrived. So why am I not getting to that next level position? What is it that's wrong with everybody else? And when you flip that script to look at what's the one thing that maybe I could improve a little bit that would change everything, that's a very rich conversation. But it usually takes some help to kind of unpack that, but also to have the support to look at it. Because when I work with people who are looking at that last 5-10%, they're out there a little over their skis in a place where they might not be that comfortable. And when you're a senior leader, you've got a lot of eyes on you. So how do you try new things and experiment and maybe make some mistakes when you're in a place of very high visibility? That is a fun opportunity.
That sounds like a really fun and interesting opportunity. It sparks the question, what, as you're working with these senior leaders and they're trying to make that last, what'd you say, 15% towards that big goal, what are some things that keep popping up, some commonalities between these senior leaders?
There's a couple of things. One of the things that I think often surprises people is the biggest challenge may not be with the individual leader themselves. It may be the long-lasting, long-held-on story that people have about something that may have happened even as much as 10 years ago. And I've got a couple client stories that come to mind where there was an incident, a thing, people made up a story. And even though the leader I'm working with is still a top performer, the hesitation about giving them more opportunity is the memory of that thing that happened 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So getting that trust repaired and getting people's impressions shifted so that the long time ago story isn't the last story and that they're willing to look at a new version of the person, that's key. A lot of things happen for leaders where it's just as simple as, am I being equal in my time and attention with people? Am I giving everyone my time in an equal and intentional way? And that seems like a small thing, but if it's not intentional, people are starting to notice inequity, which really deteriorates credibility. And the other thing that I would highlight too is just tone of voice. What's the level of optimism a leader brings to the conversation? Because if you're the leader who's always disrupting or negating people's ideas, that's pretty difficult to be around. You might find you have a turnover issue. So we talked about leaders having followers, but if your followers keep rolling off to go someplace else,
something's happening.
That really points to a problem.
Yeah. Sounds like, you're bringing awareness to the game.
Absolutely. That's number one. And you'd think it happens automatically that people are really self-aware, but one of the smoke screens that comes up for people who are in elevated positions of authority within an organization is they keep thinking, I've got it, I've got it, I've got it. And they may not have the opportunity or the impetus to reevaluate, am I really showing up in the way that I think I am? Or am I missing some opportunities that I want to be managing differently?
Right. Yeah. Well, it sounds like the leaders that are seeking you out at least have the awareness that they're missing something, or they have somebody in their corner that said, you're missing something.
That's right. I have some people who come to me because of their own awareness or desire to move ahead, or they've had a major event that happened. And I have a lot of companies who come saying, we have someone that we really value and want to retain, and we want to invest in them, not only to retain them, but to give them the opportunity to take on larger roles of impact and influence within the organization.
Yeah. I mean, that seems like it could be difficult, like when an organization says, hey, so-and-so, you're great, but you're not as great as we want you to be, and we want you to talk to Tucker Miller here. How does that usually received?
I love how you characterized it, because that's frequently how people I work with, where their company has hired me to work with them, they'll start internalizing that dialogue no matter how differently it was explained by their company. They'll start to think, are they just spinning this, or are they just manipulating me to think this isn't a bad thing? So the thing that I always say to my clients is, I only ever get hired by companies to work with people who are highly valued. And it's because you're so highly valued that we have the opportunity to work together. So let's get to work. When I can say it, even if it's what's been said already, but when they hear it from a third person, I think that reassures them a lot. And then we move quickly into it. Let's just get the work done. Let's look for the opportunity.
You have your way. You move past it with them. You make them feel secure.
Yeah.
And they're obviously intelligent, high-performing people with people that love them and want to see them doing better. I love how you said it, because we don't get to talk about love very much in business, but that's exactly what happens, is that people really care about the person. Sure.
There are some occasional exceptions where I'm in there to work with someone who's exposed the company to some sort of risk. So my background as an attorney, I may get asked to come in and do a bit of an intervention. But generally speaking, particularly when we're focusing on leadership capability, it's really because their company loves them and importantly wants to keep them. So how do we retain and develop this great talent?
Wow, what a great gift to receive somebody like you on the other end to say, hey, we're going to take you to that next 10, 15% because we want you to be that 99 to 100% here and we believe in you.
See, I'm going to take a clip of exactly that from this conversation.
Yeah.
And if they don't believe what I tell them, I'll just play what you said, that this is a great gift to them.
Yeah, you heard it here.
Yeah, you heard it here.
Yeah, Christmas is coming. Somebody's birthday is coming.
Yeah.
Somebody's anniversary is coming.
Yeah.
So, but I'm hearing a lot about these senior leaders. I'm hearing a lot about corporations. But what about individuals like me where, hey, I'm working for myself. And what do you have to offer for men and women in my position?
I love that you asked that. So I've spent most of my time in corporate life. And as I started my own practice about 4 years ago, and this is a second version of that. So as I've done that, it's been an opportunity to really get to know small business owners, solo practitioners, solopreneurs. And I said to you that I knew very early on in life, I love business. I love to know how it works. How do people work? How do the people fit within what they do? And so part of my adventure at this stage in my life is to take what I've learned from my corporate experience and then apply it and bring it to small business owners to help them lead effectively as well. Because sometimes people will say, well, my business is just me, or I only have one or two people working with me, but you're still leading in your business and leading with your customers, and I can help with that too. They're all transferable skills.
All right. So there's help for us, solopreneurs.
Absolutely, and I'd love to help any of you.
All right. I love it. Before we take our next break, just what one piece of advice do you have for the young entrepreneurs that are listening?
Well, one, congratulations, young entrepreneurs, for listening and learning at this stage in your business experience. Keep doing it. Stay curious. Get better at your craft, but don't become such an expert that you're not continuously learning for the rest of your life. We can always get better.
Thank you for that. All right. So you've been listening here. I'm Chris Erdmann on Made of More, and I've been interviewing Tucker Miller, and this is KKNW. Tune back in right after these few messages.
Man, I love my kids so much. I once sat for 3 hours in the cold rain to watch her soccer team lose by 18 goals.
I love my kids so much, I once used a tube to suck snot out of her stuffed nose at 3 a.m.
You win.
Love your kids? Love them enough to make sure they're in the right car seat. From toddlers to tweens, visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat to find the right seat for their age and size. Keep them safe. Visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diaspora, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diaspora offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests, on the Diaspora Show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
Be sure to support the sponsors of your favorite shows on Alternative Talk 1150.
Hey, welcome back to Made of More. I'm your host, Christopher Erdmann, and I'm sitting here with Tucker Miller of Onward Leadership and the author of First 4 Words.
That's right.
Yeah. So we're just coming back. You told us a little bit about some of the early beginnings, and you also talked about leadership. So anything else you want to add to that before we roll on?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Well, so I want to talk about your book, The First 4 Words. I've been starting to read it. I just, been learning a little bit more about it. In fact, I spoke to AI today quite a bit about it. It was fantastic being able to have like a snapshot of each chapter. So I feel like I've already talked to you once today.
Yeah.
Kind of weird how technology is working into everything, isn't it?
We should have dialed her in and let her do the interview today, perhaps.
Yeah, I was actually kind of worried that she could take over this whole interview when I started getting into it. Well, tell me a little bit about The First 4 Words. Let our audience know what it's about.
Well, The First 4 Words is my answer to the question or the challenge that so many of my clients put in front of me. After working with them and identifying that they needed to have a conversation that they had been avoiding, they were afraid to have the conversation. They weren't sure how to do it. So we'd talk about, let's have the conversation, let's plan the conversation, etc. All that prep and a lot of agreement that they were going to do it. And then when they'd come back at the next session, I'd say, how did it go? And time again, no matter who I talked to or what the conversation was going to be about with whoever, I kept hearing one thing over and over, and that was that the conversation didn't happen. And more importantly, when I asked them why it didn't happen, I didn't know what to say. Now, let's just take a beat on that. I'm working with senior level leaders who have been in business for a long time, many of them highly educated. I love working with lawyers. I love working with all kinds of people who clearly are not lacking for vocabulary. They know the words to say, but they would say, I didn't know what to say, even when we planned ahead for how they could have the conversation. So this really left me stymied because as a coach, you're not just helping people figure things out, you're activating the behaviors that move them beyond discomfort and into the results that they want to achieve. So I thought, I've got a gap here between them sitting on the couch and them having the conversation that they say they need and want to have. So how do I shorten that distance? That was the dilemma. Well, during the pandemic, I was hiking a lot around my neighborhood, thinking through this challenge, and I had an aha.
What was it?
Well, it was an early idea that I quickly began to test with people, and it was, is there some sweet spot that if I could find a way to gamify how to start a conversation, what would be the shortest amount of words that would still be effective, clear, and meaningful, but made having the conversation or starting it so easy that they could not have the conversation? And the epiphany was around Name That Tune, a game show that I remember watching when I was a child.
I remember that.
And those contestants, at one point, there was one section of the game where the contestants would be face to face and they'd be told something about a tune. And then they were to vie back and forth. How few notes would it take for them to be able to identify the tune? And I was like, what is the number to get the conversation started? Kind of like that.
Sure.
So I started testing the idea with people. I put down, this was during COVID, so I had adult kids who'd come home and they were living with us. And I put this piece of butcher paper on the table. I told them the idea and I said, I want you to start listening and write down phrases of what you notice. I also was talking with clients all the time and I would write down things. 4 words was the sweet spot. It was just enough, but not too much. And when you think about how rapidly our brains are firing all the time and attention spans have gotten so incredibly short right now. We don't even need people to make sense or finish a sentence. We've moved on to the next thing. So getting it really short and brief, capture people's attention and retain it, giving them time to process it and respond seemed to be what I thought might be the magic sauce.
Right.
So when I started asking my clients who had previously told me they didn't know what to say, I would ask them, if you could start that conversation we've been talking about, that you agree you need to have, that could possibly change everything, if you could start it in as few as 4 words, what would you say?
That relieves the pressure for me in a lot of conversations.
At first, there's this huge amount of disbelief, like, I can't do that. Wait a second. And what happens, there's actually a lot of neuroscience that goes with this. We move away from the amygdala, the lizard that lives in the back of our head that is afraid about what's going to go wrong or how people will respond or whatever. And as soon as we make it into a game or a puzzle, we move around to the other part of our brain that just lights up and is so excited for the challenge. So I would have people who would come up with a forward phrase, and then they were either motivated, so you were motivated when you heard it, like, it's so simple, I'm ready to go do that. And I had some people say, that is so stupid. I will show you how that will not work. I said, great.
Either way, you're right.
Please do. That's right. I said, whatever it takes. My job is to get you off the couch and into the conversation. I don't care what your mindset is getting there. Just try it. And time again, they found out that once they started the conversation, once begun, then had, they were then having the conversation. And people will frequently say, but once it started, what do I say next? I said, trust the other person to want to have the conversation with you. It will come to you. I mean, we're all able to talk to each other. It's the start. The art is in the start.
The art is in the start. I love
right.
that. Yeah, the first 4 words.
Yep.
You know, over our conversation this past week, when you said that to me, just like it's 4 words, that light bulb just went off. And that's like I said earlier on Instagram today, I'm like, I wish I knew this person 30 years ago, because you could have helped me move forward on so many things and so many conversations. And just learning it this week, I don't have the 4 words down yet because it's coming out in 3 or 5, but I'm starting to work on phrases that I could utilize in my daily business.
Yeah, that's really what it is. And if it's not for, who cares? You're already further along for trying it out and coming up with some things. So it's not intended to be a gimmick or a strict rule. It's a concept to get you thinking, how can I feel more confident entering the conversation, simplify the message, and be a lot more clear? Yeah. So if they're away 4 or 5 or 6,
it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I will say when it's 2 or 3, sometimes that's not enough context. I've tested that too. And, I invite you to test it and tell us what your reactions are that you get. I think there are some things where 3 will work, but a lot of times,
I think we were talking yesterday. It was like, one thing was like the difference between eat now or to like, do you want to have dinner?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
It sounds a little too abrupt, a little too brusque, but let me assure you, just because it's 4 words doesn't mean it's going to go over well. I have yet to find any example where over my dead body is going to be a good conversation.
Right.
Even though it's 4 words.
You want to keep it a little lighter, a little more optimistic, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
I could, as soon as you start talking to me about this book, I could immediately start looking back and be like, I could identify very successful people around me in my life, and they have an art of, many of them have an art of being able to cut right in and say exactly what they need to say in very few words and grab people's attention.
Right.
And I realized, like, this is something that I want to become better at. That's why I'm so excited that you're here today.
Thank you. Yeah.
So talk to me about some of your favorite chapters in this book, because it's not just about, what I've discovered, it's not just about professionals. You cover a lot of areas of life.
That's right. I actually received some feedback from someone, another lawyer, and she said, I love this book. I love it. But let me tell you what I hate about it. It was a podcast like this, so I'm like, okay, this will be interesting. And she wasn't editing, so I was just kind of bracing myself for it. She says, what I hate about it is that you characterize it as a business book because, as you said, Chris, it covers more than that. So my starting point when I was figuring it out was, how do I serve my clients and answer this problem that I kept seeing in working with them? So there are some chapters around leadership, building trust, encouraging collaboration, working with your team. There are definitely chapters on that. But it began to expand as people started to talk with me as I was testing the ideas. Could you write a chapter on this? What about a family gathering? What helps it go well and where does it go awry? Do you have any forward phrases that might work for that? Well, yes, I do. It's in the book. How do you handle issues of grief and setback? Is there something that we can say in those times of trauma or grief that are genuinely helpful and not trite? There's a chapter on that. So there are other pieces there for people to use in applying in life. And the woman that I was referring to, she said, I sure wish I had this for some conversations with my husband, and definitely when I was leading my daughter's brownie troop. All of that would have been really useful. And I, throughout the book, have forward phrases that people could use.
Right. What are some of your favorite forward phrases?
Well, one of my favorite ones, I didn't even really plan this, but I had someone confront me and say, I totally don't understand the concept of this. How would this even work? This was a realtor who I knew, and he said, I don't get it. I just don't see it. I'm happy for you, but not for me. He said, can you give me an example? Just like you said, Chris. I said, yeah, I think I can. How about this? Let's have a conversation. And I could see him just count on his finger. Yeah. That. And he sat back and he smiled and he said, I haven't been doing that. That would absolutely work. And he said that would be, something to try. And that's really the goal.
I love how simple that let's have a conversation.
Let's have a conversation.
Because not just in real estate, but almost that's enough to get almost any conversation started.
Right.
Wow.
Have some free time.
Very powerful.
Let's solve it together.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many examples. When you start listening for it, you go, oh, someone just did that. Mm-hmm. And I get a lot of emails where people will end with a forward phrase and then they'll say, see what I did there? And I'm like, yeah, I see what you did there. Yeah. It's not lost on me.
Yeah, I think this is more of a relationship book.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It can be used in that. And my husband's not thrilled about this, but he did give me the okay. He shows up in the book.
Okay.
Yeah. As does my parents and my sisters and my kids, that in one way or the other, there are stories from business and in life throughout the book. And all of business is about a relationship.
It really is.
Yeah.
Not very many people are out there writing books. A lot of people are out there learning and educating and listening. I'm curious, what did you learn about yourself writing this book?
Now, Chris, that's a very good question. No one asked me that before. I like that. One big thing that I learned is I can do it. Mm-hmm. And I knew I could do the writing, but the commitment to do the book, the whole process of the book, the team of people that you bring forward to support all that process, design, layout, galleys, all this foreign language stuff around publishing a book, stepping into that was really hugely valuable. Writing a book had been I hate bucket list. I don't like that, but it had been a dream that I'd had for a really long time. And I'd kicked around different ideas for a book, but they never really sparked enough energy, joy, passion, enthusiasm for me to go the extra mile. And then when I got this idea and I could see the value in it and I got the feedback around it, that was just the lift I needed to really pour myself into it. And I probably respect myself just a little bit more for having written the book instead of it always being, something out there. I remember I used to date someone who was in med school, and he said, the funny thing is when you're in med school, you attract all these people who are talking to you and say, I thought about being a doctor. I could have been a doctor. He said, but they weren't. I'm the one here doing the work. And I think that is one of those dividing lines. I could have written a book, but did you?
But did you? So,
for a long time, I was the person who said, I want to write a book and didn't. And now I have that done.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. One day, I don't know if it's in my future to write a book one day, but I hear that you learn a lot about yourself and you learn a lot more about your craft.
You spend a lot of time in your own company, which is one thing, but I will give you a tip if you decide to write a book. I wrote the first 3 chapters in Europe, in France. And if you're going to write somewhere, why not go to France?
Why not?
Or wherever.
Wherever.
Takes the pain out of it.
Yeah, somewhere that's inspiring to you, right?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that. All right, we're about to go to another break with some commercials here. I'm Chris Erdmann, your host on the show Made of More, sitting here with Tucker Miller, and we'll be back.
For 75 years, the Muscular Dystrophy Association's voices have thundered through the halls of Congress.
For 75 years, we've willed the impossible into existence.
For 75 years, the MDA community has pushed the science,
shifted the narrative,
and established the field of neuromuscular medicine.
And until that day, when this is all a thing of the past,
you couldn't stop us if you tried.
Join us and celebrate 75 years of breakthroughs at MDA75.org.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdmann. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
No other station delivers this much variety. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to the show Made of More. I'm Chris Erdmann, your host, and I'm sitting here with Tucker Miller of Onward Leadership and the author of the book, The First 4 Words. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing all that we did on the last segment. But, one thing I want to lead into is you're helping a lot of entrepreneurs out there, and what is one way that entrepreneurs can find out if they're made of more or what they're made of?
One, we're always made of more than what we necessarily see in ourselves or recognize. And so the question that you pose really comes back to that level of self-awareness. And even when you're highly self-aware, there's going to be little gems that others will see that you may or may not fully accept or recognize in yourself. So the made of more dilemma for someone in business is really, how do I identify what my unique genius is? And that's a phrase I use in my coaching. Where do people unpack, uncover, discover the things that inform the path for their next best chapter? So I was just talking with someone this morning, and he wanted help on doing a presentation. How do I do my presentation? So we talk about his presentation, and then suddenly I'm saying, well, tell me about where you grew up. He's like, does that go in the presentation? I said, I don't know, it might, but let's just have this conversation. Tell me about how you grew up. What kinds of things did you do when you were young? And through this series of what he thought were random things, there was a through line that he'd never seen before that described exactly what his genius and value is, not only to himself in terms of his energy and passion for the work that he does, but it's also that unique quality that he delivers to his clients. So finding that unique genius, naming it, and I would pose that to your audience and to you too, Chris, I know you're thinking about it, is if you don't know what your unique genius is, how can you leverage it? So the process I use with clients is to really look specifically at core values, life experiences, and looking for patterns. And they're the patterns that, even doing this work on myself, they were patterns once I finally figured it out that showed my unique genius was everywhere, all over the place, all the time, at every stage of my life. We think of our lives as, well, this is when I lived here, and this is when I had that job, and this is when I had that boss, or I was married to this person, and I had these children. We think of it in segments of chronological time rather than looking through that through line. And so having someone to reflect and lead through that process can lead people to discovering that the more is the thing that's always been there, that they just didn't recognize. And once they recognize, the more is then, what do I do with it? Where do I go from here? It's such a fun, exciting process to not only discover it, but then start actively figuring out, now, how do I want to leverage this? What does that look like in my work, in my life, and the choices that I'm making?
Sure, yeah. Wow, so I'm just thinking, like, what keeps reoccurring in my life? And I have these ideas that keep popping up, and I'll be talking about some of this to JD later, actually, and possibly you too.
I hope so. And do you want to hear a few things that I've already picked up in a couple of conversations with you?
I do.
Yeah. You have a very entrepreneurial brain. You have a tremendous insight around your limitations, and you want to push past them, and you keep stretching yourself in ways that are uncomfortable, but then build competency and ultimately confidence. You're an adventurer. You have a lot of physical energy, high impact, physical, fast moving energy, and you have a fast moving brain. We've only talked a couple of times, so there's more there.
Yeah.
But those are little pieces that I notice by way of patterns in the things that you've shared about yourself.
Oh, wow. I have to say.
Was that accurate?
I can't argue with any of it. Sometimes in the morning, my brain might be moving a little slower, but maybe around.
We all have that.
Yeah, around 2, 3 o'clock, it starts moving a lot faster.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
But everything, I can't argue with that. And I just want to say, wow, that's nice. I'm sitting across from somebody that's coaching and caring and bringing awareness out of other people. I think I called you earlier this week the awareness queen.
Yeah.
So, and And I believe in that. And that's why I'm intrigued to have you here, is because I think people need to know more about who Tucker Miller is, what Tucker Miller does, and also finding a way to connect with you. What are some of the best ways to connect with you?
Well, you'd asked me earlier if I'm on Instagram. I'm barely on Instagram. So I am on LinkedIn a lot, and I have a lot of insights that I post multiple times a week on LinkedIn. So if people want a little bit of inspiration, that would be a good place to look for me. I also have a website, onwardleadership.com, as well as another website, jtuckermiller.com, that one being more for my speaking.
Sure.
But you get a pretty good perspective of the range of things that I do by way of training and coaching from the onwardleadership.com website.
Tell me a little bit more about your speaking. I'm guessing public speaking.
Public speaking. So one of my areas of genius is storytelling. I absolutely love connecting with people through the stories of their lives and sharing the stories of my life and using them as those learning moments. And I also come from a long line of Midwestern storytellers that can really spin a yarn. It's so enjoyable. I
haven't heard that in a while. I like that.
Yeah,
spin
I
a yarn.
love that. My husband always says, "Where did you come from? You sound like you're straight out of the 30s. And it's because I'm not from the 30s, but I listened to a lot of storytellers who were telling stories at that time. And I love connecting with people. And I started, when we think about genius, I did not know I was an expert speaker. I didn't know that was the thing, but I had grown up telling stories, listening to stories. And then I found myself in various roles where I needed to explain things. So I started out my career as a lawyer, and someone needed to understand X, Y, and Z, or could you come and do a lunch and learn on this particular topic? Sure. Various small moments like that revealed that not only was I pretty good at public speaking, I really enjoyed it. And the thing that I love most about it is connecting with people in an entirely different way, because, you're looking at the audience, you're looking at people have that aha moment. I'm really good at intuitively reading the room. And so there's that fun of sharing some knowledge that is exciting or interesting or fun. I recently led a company retreat, and one of the people who'd been involved in working to put that retreat on and had hired me, and we'd worked on the content. She came up to me afterwards and she said, "I'm just going to give you the feedback the way I see it." I'm like, okay.
What was it?
I don't know what she was going to say, but the way she said it was so serious. And she said, "I knew you'd be good. I knew you'd cover the things that we needed to cover, but I had no idea it was going to be fun and that you were funny." When I got my think hat on and I'm solving a problem and I'm figuring it out, maybe I'm not so funny, but put me in front of a room, I'm going to have a lot of fun and make sure that other people have fun as well. So that, what do I talk about? Well, I talk about the first 4 words. I talk about the things that we're talking about here. And I've also led so many sessions around workplace behavior, appropriate conduct, all the other things, but let's make it fun. Let's amplify our leadership and not make it so heavy and dry.
Like you were saying, like move the brain movement from the back to the front.
From the back to the front.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I love frequently is you put an attorney in front of the room, everybody's already buckling up because they think they're going to be bored to death. And often the feedback I get is, "Wow, you're not like all the other attorneys." And I usually say because I'm nice or because I'm funny. But it's more that I'm not going to lecture people and talk about case after case after case. I want to know what makes the audience members tick and how can I help show up and solve the problems that they're having. And so this is a long-winded response to the speaking, but it's really, I would say, a conversation, creating a two-way dialogue between what's happening in the front of the room and involving people to challenge, ask questions, talk with each other. We need more of that. And I'm happy to serve it up.
It's, I've sat in front of, some of your shorter talks, and I feel like you are talking not just to the room, but you're talking to the individual in the room. And I also feel like you're doing your best to engage with individuals. And so and I think that's just a whole nother skill set. Is that what you're doing?
It's what I hope I'm doing. So
Yeah.
thank you for that feedback. I genuinely care about people, and I love connecting with them. So I'm looking for those opportunities for sure.
So for public speaking and people that want to be better, what do you have advice for them that you would?
Yeah, and it's going to be to the person, to the individual, because everyone's got a challenge. But the challenge that is very consistent for people around public speaking is they will confidentially lean in and quietly say, I don't feel all that confident. And I go, I know. Because everyone has that problem.
Sure.
I have those moments too. And it's really just throwing yourself into the deep end of the pool and then learning how to swim. And you do that in your career all the time. So it's just taking that skill set, putting it in front of a speaking situation. This podcast is a great example. You want to get better at speaking, you just put yourself in situations where you're regularly speaking. You get better at it. But the individual challenge is, what's the thing getting in the way? And frequently I will work with people to lean in and really unpack what is their unique value proposition? What are the unique values? I'm working with a gentleman right now who confidentially told me he's not very confident speaking in front of a group.
Sure.
And I said, that's fine. Everyone has those moments. And we started working on one of his presentations, and I knew that in his top 5 values, creativity and humor were right in there.
Okay.
And what he did was tell me all the dry facts about something that he knew a lot about, but really didn't care anything about. And I said, wouldn't it be more interesting to at least you if you found a fun way to present this in a way that you showed up in front of the facts instead of hiding behind them? That led to an entirely different presentation. I cannot wait to hear how it goes.
I want to hear this presentation.
I know. And it was about insurance. But I think it's going to be really interesting when he's done.
Okay. Am I going to be present for this one already?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right. Nobody that we both
But I'll
know
tell
about.
you how it goes.
All right. Yeah. Let me know how it goes. What about some challenges that you are seeing entrepreneurs facing in today's world? AI is here. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and maybe you could share a little bit.
So thank you for asking about AI, because I talk to so many people who are secretly engaging in a lot of AI research, and then publicly they'll say it's very scary. It's so scary. But it doesn't stop them from doing it. But then they come out, it's so scary. And I said, let's just stop for a moment. It is no different than a piece of cheesecake on the plate. I said, you look at a piece of cheesecake, at least for me, that is so delicious, so yummy. Yes, thank you. I would like a lot of that. That sounds very, very enjoyable. On the flip side, is it good for me? Are those calories that I need? Is this anything that I should be having? No. Someone could say it's really bad for me, even though I would say it looks really good for me. They're both true. So the thing about AI and the thing about being an entrepreneur is to catch yourself, that self-awareness. Where am I telling a story that's not serving me, plus or minus? And also recognize everything has a plus side and a negative side. Choose the one that serves you and your business best. So if AI works for you and helps you be more effective in business, fine. Do you need to set some limits around how you use it? Fine. But if you have AI as a part of your strategy, find the version of using it that makes a lot of sense. And that's so true with everything else. The other thing that I would say for entrepreneurs is be aware of when you need help. It is so hard as a small business owner to wear so darn many hats. When I was in corporate, go to marketing and have marketing do their thing. Finance, they'll take care of the finances. But when you're in business, you kind of have to be responsible for all of it.
That's right.
But being responsible doesn't mean you do it all. So where are the resources that will support you in leveraging your genius in the most joyful, productive way? And what are the resources to bring in that will support you and allow you to do that?
I love that because, as an entrepreneur, I'm always facing, it's like, there's all these things to do every day. We have all these clients and all these meetings and conversations. And on top of that, all these tasks. Yeah. A lot of these tasks, even though they look different from one another, they're reoccurring tasks.
Yeah.
They're just with different clients on different little missions. And it's, So my question is like, as an entrepreneur, what's a great way to expedite finding the right people or the right leverage? Because it's so easy. Everybody interviews so well. And those great interviewers, they're great people, but they might not be the right fit.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned interviewing too, because we can interview in a number of ways. But the reality is when you're interviewing someone, it's like dating. It's not really the whole person that's showing up. It's the one that most wants to impress you. You won't really get to see who you just hired until they're already there. So one of the things is to think about, how do I do a conditional hire so that I can really test the performance on the job, maintain a few exits until you're sure that that person is effective. Relying exclusively on what they say on an interview, just know that the interview is not the truest, most complete picture of a person. And you haven't done anything wrong, and they haven't done anything wrong if it doesn't work out. The other...
I like that you said that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Does that hit home?
Yeah, it does for me, and I feel like it probably will for a lot of people. It does.
Yeah.
It's not wrong to let somebody go in business if it's not the right fit.
Right, exactly. And it's hard to do at times, but it's business. It's not family, it's business. And a lot of great businesses have been ruined because they started treating people as friends and family rather than business assets. The other thing to think about is networking is huge, because you can have your referral partners vet that person based on their actual lived experience of having worked with people. So build your network. We're in a networking group,
Sure.
you and I, and what are other people's experiences? How do we share those resources? What are the good experiences that people are having? And I meet a lot of people who say, well, there's no way I could work with people in this business or in this country or any number of things. And it's like, is that an assumption? Is that a judgment? Or is that actually true? You know, being clear about where your potential blind spots are and listening to other people's experience, remaining curious about it so that you are finding great resources. I've had so many people tell me, well, there's no diverse talent in X number of city. Yeah, there is. But if you believe that, you don't find it. So check your beliefs at the door and get curious would be key.
You're going to find what you believe in.
Absolutely. Stay open.
Yeah, I love it. You say that. Stay optimistic.
Yeah, absolutely. Optimism is key.
All right. Well, anything else as we're diving in the last couple of minutes here of the show that you want people to know about your business or yourself?
Well, I think we've covered so much. You've asked really great questions, which I absolutely appreciate. And I hope people can find the book if they're curious. I will suggest that they search on Amazon for J. Tucker Miller. If you search the first 4 words, you might get a bunch of primary school books,
Sure.
ABC books. So you haven't done anything wrong if that's what pulls up. Keep scrolling down. I'll show up there eventually.
I love that
list.
I love that. Yeah. Any for the new entrepreneurs out there that may not be able to afford a coach quite yet, and they're looking to figure out awareness. Any last tips for that?
Well, I will say my Clarity Catalyst coaching program is just a 3-hour program. Whatever you think about how expensive it might be, it probably isn't. This is my gift to entrepreneurs, to give them the kickstart and to help them get more clear. So that's 3 hours with a couple 30-minute follow-up calls. It's a very small investment that might accelerate their advancement.
It may be more expensive not to do, is what I'm picking up.
Now you're singing my song, mister.
Yeah, well, through experience, I can say that.
Yeah.
All right, so you've been listening to the show Made of More. I'm your host, Chris Erdmann. I've been sitting here with Tucker Miller. Tucker, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing all your wisdom and experience.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. And so you can listen to this show Wednesday mornings, 8 a.m. on KKNW, 11:50 a.m., or on Apple or Spotify or some of your favorite places, even YouTube. So thank you very much. We'll see you next week at 8 a.m.